That's nice. Would worship here again. 5 out of 5 stars on Google would come here again. So if you're new with us this morning, you may not know, or maybe you've been vacationing, and so I just want to do a quick recap of where we have been this summer, in case this is new to you and you're wondering why we have weapons on the platform today. Maybe you haven't noticed yet. I want to tell you that we've been in this Farm to Table series, so taking just the different ways, especially in the parables of Jesus, but taking the different ways, because Pastor Erin had to go her own way in a message. So the ways that the scriptures talk about these farming metaphors, these agricultural metaphors, and how powerful they are to our lives. So we've been a few different places together. We started off talking about the mystery of the farm, trusting God and in all things, and participating in his kingdom work, even as he's the one who's sovereign and is going to make all things make sense in the end and take care of all things. We're to work alongside him. And this, of course, as you, in case you didn't know, if it's important you all know, that I harvested this wheat myself. If you didn't, maybe you didn't miss that. You should probably know. That was the best part of my summer for sure. So we were talking about that and the wheat harvest and those kind of things. And secondly, we talked about the patient farmer. Pastor Erin talked to us about having patience with God and patience in life. And she talked about the difference between just that quick work of doing quick work. It's hard work, but of doing landscape work versus waiting for something beautiful to grow from your garden. And so these are fresh from her garden again this morning, or from somewhere that she stole them from. Yeah, from Erin's garden, okay. Whatever. And then Scott came and talked to us about the vine and the branches. What a beautiful message. I don't know if the Schroths are here. Did you guys bring us anything this morning? Oh, you forgot. I got a text like, do you want us to bring the ficus back to show that it's still alive? If you weren't here for Scott's message, there was a plant miracle that has taken place. And if you don't know, you can go back and watch that. I don't mean to make it an inside joke. Anyone can go watch the message. It's hard to explain in just a few seconds. So that vine and branches message, where we were asking God, how can you leverage my circumstances to bring greater fruitfulness in me, more Christ-likeness and more growth? We talked about the discerning farmer, judging the fruit of your life and being able to recognize the work of the enemy, and starting with that, kind of pointing that in the mirror. We're talking about the wheat and the tares and the difference between those two things when they make fruit, that you can be able to discern which is which. Last week, Dave talked to us about rotting on the vine, that the harvest is ready. Jesus was very clear about this, and the workers refuse to pray. And this is the one that the guy at the antique store said, are you starting a revolution? Should you have a weapon with you? What are you doing here? But this is just a sickle. It's just a sickle. Just a reminder that every one of us is called to be a harvester. Every one of us as a believer in Jesus. And today we're going to talk about the focused farmer. Saying yes to Christ that kind of deprioritizes everything else in your life. So we're going to get into that this morning, but I wanted you to see in our Farm to Table series, Deeply gave me this idea that we should probably put it all out on a table to see all of our farming metaphors for you probably see this on Instagram later, right? Deeply, you're going to do a video for me? Yeah, thank you, okay. I have a book on my shelf in my office that I was given, maybe I inherited from Pastor Dell. It's called The Hard Sayings of Jesus. And if you recall, the teachings of Jesus were really in 4 books in the Bible. And there is in just this one book on my shelf, from those 4 gospel accounts, 70 chapters. 70 hard sayings of Jesus that are found in the Gospels. It's by F.F. Bruce. And of those 70 chapters, which is kind of a lot, but which cover all 4 Gospels, of those 70, 3 of those chapters are dedicated to one paragraph in Luke chapter 9. Why don't we turn to Luke chapter 9 this morning? There are 6 short verses in Luke chapter 9. And there's a parallel account to this in Matthew chapter 8. And these are considered some of the hardest things that Jesus said. It takes up a lot of space in any time you're studying the scriptures, the gospel accounts. And the question for us as we read this is, how are you at hearing hard things? Do you love it when somebody tells you something hard? Do you love it when somebody starts them? It's like, I have something difficult to tell you. Some folks talk a big game about how they're like, I just tell it like it is. Okay. Jesus isn't that guy, of course. He's interested in making sure that he's very clear about what it means to follow him, and that's what we're going to catch this morning. And he's asking the question, which we're going to continue to ask ourselves this morning, which is, do you know what you signed up for? So in Luke chapter 9, we're going to start at verse 57. It'll be on the screen for you, of course, but it's also in the YouVersion Bible app under More and then Events. You can follow along there as well. It's loaded for you. In the NIV, but also in other translations like the ESV, this section is titled, The Cost of Following Jesus. Let's read it together. As they were walking along the road, a man said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. Jesus replied, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He said to another man, follow me. But he replied, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Still another said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. Jesus replied, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. If you still have your Bibles open there, you can just kind of scan back a little bit. Take a look back to verse 51. It says, as the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, talking about Jesus, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. So that's the setup that we are in here. And what happens if you kind of skim through that, you'll see they meet opposition in Samaria because of their destination. The Samaritans don't want them to go, don't want Jesus to go to Jerusalem because of a ethnic and cultural divide between the Samaritans and the Jews, and that's what's kind of going on behind the scenes here. And then in this context, this is where James and John want to call down fire from heaven on the Samaritans. Very gracious and loving thing to do. Jesus rebukes them. And remember, like, Jesus has done great things in Samaria. So it's not like they just hate Jesus because, a little while earlier, remember the woman at the well? All the people who came to believe in Jesus? But then all of a sudden, it's a different story here. When Jesus lets his plans be known that he's on his way to Jerusalem, suddenly they turn against him. And then right after this passage that we just read, you'll see that Jesus then is going to be sending out 72 of his followers to do ministry in pairs. And so it's no coincidence, of course. He's making sure that that they all understand what it's going to mean for them to follow him. It's not all going to be the woman at the well and sunshine and roses. There's going to be opposition. There's going to be trouble. And he warns them about it. And this is the context that we grab these verses from this morning. The first thing I think that Jesus says to us and to his disciples, of course, first was, hey, listen, if you're going to follow me, it won't be fancy. Does anybody like to be fancy? I'm not much of a fancy person, so that's fine with me, but it won't be fancy, though I don't like bugs and I don't like sleeping outside. I don't like camping, so maybe I am fancy. Just again, remember, in 57, as they were walking along the road, a man said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus replied, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. There is a parallel passage to this, as there are for a lot of gospel stories in the Gospels, in Matthew chapter 8. And in that parallel account, Matthew identifies this man who is saying this with Jesus. He's identified as a teacher of the law. And Jesus is saying, listen, as opposed to being a religious leader whose livelihood was secure in that culture, he's saying, following me, this is not that. This is not that. He's saying, are you willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of the call? Following a rabbi in those days, you might know, meant to, like in one sense, literally walk behind them. Walk behind them and be a part of whatever they were doing and learn from them every day. And of course, on a bigger scale, it also meant submitting to him and to what he taught. But Jesus is saying to follow me is something a little different. It was more like following a prophet. The life of a prophet was uncertain, and they often lived on the donations of those who responded to their ministry. And so Jesus is just looking at them and saying, listen, do you know what you signed up for? It won't be fancy. It also won't be convenient. Verse 59, remember, says, he said to another man, follow me. But he replied, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Does this one come across a little harsh to anybody this morning? Hence why it's in the book, The Hard Sayings of Jesus. And this was, like, as much as it hits your modern ear as being harsh, it would have been even more so in first century Judaism, because the burial of the dead took precedence over kind of anything else that was going on in your life. It was a really It was really noble work to bury the dead. And so it's a little hard to say what's being implied here because we're not there on the scene. We're getting kind of the synopsis of it all these years later. But one of these scenarios is happening. One thing that could be is that the man's father had indeed died, and he needed to go and be with his family and be part of that burial. That's possible. Another option is that the man's father was dying, and he wanted to be there for his passing whenever that day came. So there was an unknown time when he would be coming back to follow Jesus. And the third option is that the man's father was alive. A lot of commentators think this is what actually is true. The man's father was alive, and he wanted to put off following Jesus until his father died. And then his family obligations would be cleared up. Then I'll come and follow you, Jesus. Like the idea of just like putting it way off to some unknown time in the future. But in any of those scenarios, whatever the scenario is that was specific to these couple of verses here, especially those first two, if that was true, leaving to follow Jesus when you had a dying father or a father who had just died, it would have been so scandalous in this man's community. Jesus says that the spiritually dead can concern themselves with burying the physically dead. That's what he means when he says this. He's trying to emphasize that the work of the kingdom is the most urgent business of all. It's more important than even whatever your culture says is the most urgent business of all. And he's not sugarcoating it here, obviously, and it doesn't come across that way, of course. That commitment of discipleship is profound. And again, in this other next two verses, do you know, disciples, what you have signed up for? So it won't be fancy, and it won't be convenient, and it also won't be without sacrifice. Verse 61, still another said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. Jesus replied, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. And here, friends, of course, is our final farm-to-table metaphor for this series. And I gotta be honest, when you read it, just at face value, it seems like a bit of overkill from Jesus, doesn't it? Like, you can't even say goodbye? Is he heartless? Is that who Jesus is? Well, of course, we know that that's not true of Jesus' character. So what is this all about? Like, what is Jesus actually saying here? So the thing that, when I was a farmer for a day, as I keep talking about, and we'll continue to talk about until you guys say, please, we beg you to stop talking about that day. The thing that I was most impressed with when I got that super fun ride in the combine a few weeks ago was, and I said this, like I actually noted this to the farmers, how straight the rows were. Have you ever looked at a field as you've driven past it and noticed how straight the rows were? Show us that, Lincoln. This is a photo. Hopefully I put the photo in there. Please tell me there's no photo? What is wrong with me? I want you to, in your mind, just imagine a perfect, I know I dropped it in the Dropbox, I just didn't drop it on the slide. But you know what that looks like, how incredibly straight those lines are. And if you ever watch them harvesting, you can see that, like, even as they're harvesting, everything, like, they don't miss anything. It's just row after row after row, how straight they were. I assumed that it was just because the driver was just very skilled, which he was, because almost nothing was missed. Even when they were harvesting acres and acres and acres of crops. And yeah, for sure, Barry, my friend Barry, the combine driver, he probably doesn't even remember that I exist, but he's burned into my memory. Barry was very, very skilled in his work. He'd been doing it for a long time, of course. But I'll tell you what else. The combine is equipped with a GPS technology. Did you know about this? There are so many computer screens in a combine. And it literally uses satellite and GPS to map the field out, and it knows exactly where everything is. And so the combine driver's job is to literally just get the row started. Technically, the combine could do even that itself, but it doesn't always work perfectly. So they turn the corner. I like to call it like a Zamboni because they don't turn tight. They turn wide like a Zamboni. I made that reference, and they were like, sure, Tracy, the giant combine's just like a Zamboni. Same basic principle. And he would start, all he had to do was kind of basically line it up to the row, and the combine took over and perfectly drove that line. And it would drive it all the way till it knew it was near the end of the field, because again, it had been mapped by GPS. And then it would give a little alarm bell would go off in the cab of the combine to make sure the driver was paying attention, that they had to take over, turn, and line up the next row and let it take over. Unbelievable. This does not happen, I'm sure, at Brian Daum Farms because they're much too professional for this, but I heard from other people that sometimes drivers of these combines and tractors who have this technology, sometimes they watch Netflix while they're harvesting a field because that's how precise the combine can harvest the wheat or plant, of course, or plow the field up. It does same basic principle. But Barry was not doing that, just want to tell you. He had the ability to make like micro adjustments to what the combine was doing because the combine was going so straight. And obviously, that kind of incredible machinery was not what they were working with in the first century, not by a long shot. Not even been around like that for a century now. But they, of course, were using yoked animals to plow the field. The farmer had to guide the plow, that was attached to these yoked animals and had to lean hard on I've learned also in this series that the blade on a plow is called a plowshare. That's where that word comes from. Did anybody else already know that? I'm sorry, I learned so much this summer. I'm such a city kid. But they had to lean really hard on the blade of the plow in order to make sure it continued to dig in while the oxen or cattle were pulling that plow. It's extremely hard work. And that's the picture that's here. When I asked Brian, our resident farmer, about this, he told me that he, of course, has never had to hand plow a field with a pair of oxen, though I would like to see that. One of the first farming lessons he told me he ever learned from his father was the importance of plowing straight lines and how much that mattered. And not only how much it mattered, but how difficult it actually is, especially when you think about how big a field would be. Even when you upgrade from oxen to tractor, it's still a difficult skill to learn. When Brian asked his dad how to do it, his dad said, you pick a point straight ahead of you, a fence post or a tree or something like that, and you look straight at it as you drive that tractor. Don't look at where you've been, disastrous. Don't even look at the ground right in front of you. You have to keep your eyes on a fixed point is the only way that you're going to plow a straight line. How's that for a spiritual metaphor that Jesus has set up for us here? Huh? I wanted to just try it this morning. I know the kids are in the service, so I thought maybe you would like to do a little something and help me out. Mrs. Tracy is going to help me. I hope this works. I've tried it out a little bit this morning. So my blindfold is here. I'm going to have them start. Do you want them to start over here, Anthony? Would that be, yeah, let's do that. Mrs. Tracy is going to pick 3 kids so that I don't get in trouble if I don't pick the right people. Okay, so Lily's going to go last, okay? Alexander, Alex, okay. You're going to go first, okay? You're going to show us, you're going to be like the tractor plowing the field. And what I want you to do is I want you to put that, Mrs. Tree's going to put a blindfold on you. And you are going to just simply, now don't let him cheat. You can't be looking down at you can't be able to see his feet. It will ruin the whole thing. If you guys were here before, while the worship team was practicing, you'd see I was walking this line over and over to make sure this worked, so it might not work, but Alex, will you be honest between you and Jesus and tell me, can you see your feet? Okay. So, Mrs. Teresa, if you could just spin, just the worries and cares of life, why don't we spin Alex just a couple of times? Just a couple of worries. Is this how life is sometimes? Okay, you can stop him and put him straight on the line. Now, can you walk that green line, please? Go. Beautiful. Yes. I love that. Let's just make sure he doesn't hurt himself. Fantastic. Yes. Yes. You're doing really great. Yep. Good. And stop right there. Nicely done, Alex. Thank you. Not bad. Not bad. I know you couldn't see it as well as I could, but he definitely started here. He came all the way up to the stage. He scooched right back. And if you imagine, that's not exactly what we're looking for in a straight line on a field. I think Lily's going to go last. Why don't we do next? And this time, I don't need a blindfold for you. Why don't we bring it up to the front of the line here? Yep. Okay. And then again, Mrs. Tracy is going to spin you 3 times. And I want you to know, by the way, I wasn't going to spin any of you. This was her idea completely. Her idea completely. Okay, so I'm going to spin you, but you have a bit of a harder job, okay? We're not going to blindfold you, but I want you to turn around. You see that exit sign behind you? She's going to spin you, and then you're going to walk the line, but you have to stare at that exit sign behind you the whole time you walk. Can you do it? Okay, let's give it a try. Let's do the worries and cares of life again. That would be fantastic. Yeah, oh, poor kid. Yeah. Okay, when she's ready, go look at the exit sign behind you, and now walk the green line straight ahead. Like this way. Come with me. You look this way. Look at that. Now walk straight ahead this way. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I love that. Oh, she's actually doing really well. She's doing pretty good. She's doing really good. All right, that was actually really a good effort. You entirely ruined my illustration, but you did such a good job doing it. Great. Okay, and then last, Lily, what I want you to do is have Mrs. Teresa spin you, and then I just want you to walk the line. Yes, just go ahead and spin. Look at these kids and all their worries and cares. Okay, now walk the line for me. Just walk to the end. It's all you have to do. Yeah, you don't even have to look at me. You don't have to even look at me. Thank you, Lily, you're done. That's it. If we didn't have such a skilled kid, that middle one would have worked better for my illustration. But it's funny, because when I did it, I fell right off the line, so I don't know. We should have had some adults do it. Probably your balance is way worse than the kids. Now that I think about it. Thanks, kids. And we assume, and so you understand the illustration. For Lily, even though she got spun at the beginning, she was able to walk like without even any trouble. She just walks straight ahead when you're looking straight ahead and you don't have anything hindering your sight. Let alone if you're blindfolded, how much more difficult that becomes. If you're not looking where you're going, how much more difficult that becomes. And we assume that's exactly what Jesus was picturing here. Knowing that his listeners would understand this metaphor immediately because they were an agricultural society. Like once you put your hand to the plow, once you dig that blade into the ground, you can't look back or you can't stay straight, is what he's saying. He's like, you just can't. When you commit your life to Jesus, when you commit your life to his mission, when you say you're going to follow him, there isn't room for anything else to be in first place in your life. You can't be thinking about what you left behind. There's nothing for you there when you're being called forward with Jesus. That's the thing. Do you know what you signed up for? The Bible Speaks Today commentary, I thought, said it so well. It says, now, we are not to misunderstand this. Ordinary security, accepted customs, home ties are still the norm. Jesus approves them since they are part and parcel of the social life of mankind as his Father created it. And that's normally the way his followers are led to live. But the crucial question, the one he is asking here, concerns what happens at the parting of the ways. Suppose I were to lead you towards work in which your income would be lower and your prospects, humanly speaking, more uncertain, and your accustomed standard of living non-existent. Or suppose I were to ask you to do something for me which, according to most people of your class and background, is simply not done. Or suppose I were to summon you to my service with a call that your nearest and dearest would have to be left without an explanation. Would you even then come my way? Regularly, God tests the earnestness of men's hearts by bringing them to this fork in the road. When it becomes necessary to choose between two ways, which do we follow? Comfort or convention or custom or Christ? The test from the very outset has been, follow me. So we have 6 short verses here, and to remind anyone who wants to follow Jesus that it won't be fancy, it won't be convenient, and it won't be without sacrifice. I am an incredible salesperson for the gospel, am I not? Who wants to join right now? Come and follow Jesus. It will cost you everything. Service for the kingdom begins the moment we receive Jesus. It continues until the Father calls us home. What does it look like? Well, of course, in detail, it's different for every person. But what is the same for every person is that the call to discipleship should have priority over everything else in your life. I think Jesus must look at us in the way that he looked at the disabled man at the pool of Bethesda in John 5. Have you heard this story? There was a man who had been an invalid for 38 years, it says. And for some time, we don't know how long, but for some time had been lying beside the pool. Because there was this superstition that when the water of the pool was stirred, the first one in would be healed. But he was never able to get there fast enough because of his disability. And he didn't have anyone to help him. If you've seen The Chosen, they do a beautiful episode that's sort of centered around this story. And Jesus comes and he looks at this incredibly sad situation. And you think that he would come alongside and see it and his heart broken for the man, which it was, and say, oh, guy, be healed. But actually, that's not exactly how the story goes. He surveys this situation and he says to the man who's been an invalid for 38 years, do you want to get well? Oof. That's quite a question. But it's interesting because the man actually doesn't answer the question. He just tells Jesus why he can't get into the pool. I don't have anyone to help me. But Jesus, of course, in his grace says, get up, pick up your mat and walk. And that's exactly what the man does. Jesus slipped away, but then found the man later and said, see, you are well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. It seems obvious, like when we're reading a story like that the man should be desperate to be healed. He should have been able to look around and see his situation. And when Jesus asked him if he wanted to be healed, he should have thrown himself into the biggest yes of his life. But I wonder, when I read this story, I always wonder if he was afraid. Like, who was he without his disability? How could he see beyond his current circumstance? How could he possibly have a vision for life without this issue? There is some comfort in the familiar, even if it's not anywhere close to how you could be living. He was nowhere close to flourishing, but it's what he knew, and is what he knew how to make an excuse for too. And I wonder if this is what Jesus is saying a little bit too in Luke chapter 9. Like, you will have to deprioritize everything else in your life. You will have to leave what is comfortable and may feel safe. It won't be fancy. It won't be convenient. It won't be without sacrifice. But do you want to be well? Same kind of question, right? So on one hand, he's asking, do you know what you signed up for? Here's some of our favorites. From John 16, Jesus said, in this world you will have. You guys did not say that with a lot of enthusiasm. You know it, that Jesus promised we would have trouble. From John 15, if the world hates you, keep in mind it hated me first. Matthew 16, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Taking up your cross is what? A symbol of death. It says you're going to have to die to yourself. You're going to have to die to this life. That's the call. Do you know what you signed up for? Following Jesus is not an add-on to your life. Following Jesus is your life. And I have to ask myself, is that what my life looks like? But let me say it this way to you also. Following Jesus isn't an add-on to your life. It is your life. Do you know what you signed up for? Doesn't inflection just make a big difference? Do you know what you signed up for if you signed up to follow Jesus? We get to be well. Like, not all of our things, like I had a professor in college always say, the best statistic ever, 1 out of every 1 person dies. Okay, so all of us, eventually our physical bodies will fail us. But listen, spiritually speaking, for sure, and plus all the other benefits and healings that Jesus brings into our lives, we get to be well from the inside out, now and for eternity. We get to walk in peace, because I know there is peace within his presence, right? Like, that's real. We get to throw off shame and condemnation. We get to walk as those who are forgiven. What a relief to live a life like that. We have strength in our weakness. We have the gifts of the Spirit of Jesus himself like that to be used in all kinds of different ways. We don't have to rely on just what we have on our own. I'm so glad for that. We can deal with life. We don't have to be a victim of life. We have the ability to continue to walk through whatever life might throw at us, and all of us are going to have some kind of story at the end. We can change. We can be transformed as our minds are made new and our actions follow. This is life. Do you know what you signed up for? It's the best exchange you could possibly have. So my question is, not only is it impossible to live this life of following Jesus while trying to look back, and that's, of course, our metaphor this morning, but why would you want to? What are you looking for? Those old habits that lead you to a destructive place? What are you looking back at? The brokenness and insecurity that used to walk in, and now you have freedom and peace in Christ? Like, what are we looking back to? So I'm asking you this morning, do you know what you signed up for? And are you following Jesus as your actual whole life? I can't think of a better way to start a new season if that isn't you. If you have said to yourself, I'm not really following Jesus like that. I may be kind of curious about Jesus, or I've maybe been to church a bunch or whatever, but I've never committed my life to Jesus. This is like today, we can start a whole new season, literally a whole new life. And I'm telling you, the stuff you're signing up for is way, way better. It's how you're made to live and flourish. Way better than what you have to give up. I wanted to this morning, as I was challenging in this way and bringing this question forward, what I wanted to do is have a few of you on Fifth Sundays, we like to do this too, is have some of you share how your life has changed because you know Christ. But instead, what I want you to do, this is your homework, and then I'm going to tell you why I decided to change the courses here. Your homework today, your altar call today is this. I want you to think of how your life has changed because of Christ and find a way to tell somebody about it this week. So that might be somebody who's very far from Christ, and you get a chance to say, hey, my family's going through this situation or whatever, but I have so much peace because I know Jesus, or whatever. Maybe parents, don't overestimate or underestimate this, parents. Listen, for you parents, you need to start telling the story of your transformed life to your kids. One of the biggest reasons that I am serving Jesus today is because I have parents and grandparents who never stop talking about the faithfulness of God to me. Share the story of your transformation with somebody. Maybe you need to post it on Facebook. We could use some more positive things there anyway. Maybe you need to send a text to somebody who God has laid on your heart. They're going through a hard thing, and say, hey, I can't solve whatever's going on in your life right now, but I want you to know I'm praying for you, and I know when I pray that God hears us and we're trusting him with this situation. Share the story of who you know Jesus to be, how he's transformed your life with someone today. I would love for you to take that as your altar call this morning.